Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Best Companies Mastermind Seminar. We're so glad to have you all here today. Now, our goal today is to share some insights, strategies, and data that can help each of you maximize employee potential and build workplaces where inclusion, belonging, and long-term success thrive. Now, whether you're an HR leader or a business executive, you're in the right place to gain some fresh ideas and actionable strategies for your organization. My name is Jaime Raul Zepeda. I'm the Executive Vice President at Best Companies Group and Color Magazine. Now, we'll be kicking off with yours truly, where I'll be sharing some key trends that we found in this year's Best Companies to Work For in Maryland list, as well as some data-driven strategies we found that really help create an inclusive workplace that can enhance employees' connection to their work and their organization. Right after that, we'll move into our panel discussion with some of the most innovative business leaders in the state. They'll be discussing things like long-term strategies for sustaining thriving workplaces, as well as other things that I know are really relevant and especially timely in employment. Now, there's going to be Q&A available throughout the sessions here. So the Q&A option should be available to you now. Feel free to drop in any questions that you might have as much as possible throughout the next hour and a half. I'll pick those up and I'll share those or I'll answer those. So please put those down. And if we can't answer anything during the session, we'll make sure to follow up with you individually. All right. So thank you again for being here. We're going to dive into today's program by first exploring what it takes to create a great workplace in the state of Maryland based on the latest Best Companies to Work For in Maryland list. So, as you can see here, we're going to start with the trends, right, that we found in the Best Companies to Work For in Maryland list that we just recently did. This is the second year that we do that. And this is a program that is available to all organizations that have employees in the state of Maryland. It is a very competitive program. We're very excited to be partnering with the Daily Record on a yearly basis to celebrate the best of the best. And because of this program, we get to find a lot of very interesting trends, data points, and overall insights in what it takes to create a great workplace in this state. So that's what we're going to be talking about today to start. First, a little bit about Best Companies Group. Since 2004, we have helped over 10,000 customers worldwide. We help them by creating a great workplace based on data, their employees' feedback, and our own best practices and benchmarks. We are very excited about celebrating our 20th year this year. And so we hope that if you have a moment, you check out what we can provide for all of you at bestcompaniesgroup.com. The first trend that really popped for us is this idea of rewarding good work. As you can see here, the best companies are in the blue bar, while the peers, the ones that did not make the list and other data that we have from other organizations, are in the red bar. The best companies in Maryland are leading the way by rewarding good work. You can see this by the fact that they outperform their peers by about 27% whenever we're asking their employees whether they feel that good work will be rewarded. So rewarding performance clearly isn't just a one-off. It is a crucial part of the employee experience for everybody that has employees in the state. The next trend is around the idea of having fully staffed teams. One of the questions that we ask in the survey is, staffing levels are adequate to provide quality products or services. And then we ask them to rate it from agree to disagree. And so as you can see here, the employees at Best Companies in Maryland outperformed their peers by 25%. What does this mean? It means that people at these organizations feel like the work they're being given can be shared more equally with their teams, or that whenever things get really tight and it gets really busy, there's a sufficiently large enough team to be able to handle that. Fairness in pay came up a lot as well this year. It is a key factor of employee satisfaction. The best companies in Maryland are 22% ahead of their peers when it comes to people, employees feeling like they are being paid fairly for the work that they do. So this clearly is a big opportunity for everybody out there. The idea of equitable compensation, because we've seen not only in our data, but in study after study around retention, is that it really has a strong correlation to people wanting to stay at an organization for the long term. There were also some challenges that were very interesting. Now, the blue chart and the blue bar and the red bar are both from best companies in the state. And as you can see here, two of the major challenges where we saw the lowest scores for these winning organizations was around how satisfied employees felt about their health insurance benefit. That was one of the lowest scores that we had across the entire survey in the 70s. And the other one was understanding or how well they understood their organization's financial health. Now, one thing that has been happening in a lot of organizations that I've talked to or that have been working with, we've been working with through our programs, is that as the business climate has got a little bit choppier or uncertain, some organizations are approaching this by only sharing the good news with their employees, right? They don't want to scare employees. They don't want to create panic. This has become a very tricky place because instead of employees feeling good about only hearing the good news, what we're seeing is that scores around these sort of questions, like how well do I feel that I understand how the organization is doing, are dropping. Employees know that there are challenges. They read the newspaper like everybody else. And so when they don't hear anything in the communications from their organization about those challenges, they assume the challenges are even worse than they really are. That is just natural human nature. And we see this in our scores and our surveys all the time, is whenever employees don't have information, they go towards the worst case scenario. So for all of you, if you're thinking about what kind of level of, how transparent and what level of information should we share about how things are going, even if things are uncertain or even if there's some choppy waters ahead, I would recommend that you lean a little bit more towards sharing more than you feel comfortable with to create a sense of transparency, as otherwise employees will fill in the details in the worst way possible. One of the interesting trends that has come up recently in not only Maryland, but in a lot of organizations across the country is the idea of psychological safety and feeling treated like a person. Two of the questions that we have in the survey hit directly toward that. And as you can see here, the best companies to work for in Maryland do a fairly good job at both of these metrics. They're in the 80s, which is very strong. It is not one of the strongest scores that we saw in the survey. It is very strong. And I point this out because it is something that is showing up a lot in organizations, and it is showing up a lot in what employees expect from their employers. And at really the best places to work that we've studied, they do this fairly well by creating an environment of psychological safety, of inclusion, of belonging, which we'll talk about next as we explore what is inclusion, what is belonging, what are some places where it shows up, and what are some strategies that all of us can take to create a more inclusive workplace. So as I move into that, I want to remind all of you that if you have a question, put it down in the Q&A. We'll make sure to answer those as they come in or at the very end. All right, so what exactly do we mean by inclusion and belonging? Inclusion, in many ways, is ensuring that people feel valued, that their opinions matter, that they have a voice in important decisions. Belonging goes a step further. It's not just including people in the right conversations, but it's also making them feel like they can be their authentic selves. They can show up fully without the fear of some sort of retribution. Also, that they feel part of something larger than themselves, their team, their company, a mission of some sort. Another way of looking at this is inclusion means that people are invited to the party. They're invited to be a part of the celebration and the work that's happening. Belonging means that they feel comfortable enough to dance at the party because they feel like they can show up as their true selves. So how do you spark action? This is a question that we get a lot at Best Companies Group. How do I know what's needed for my organization to pay attention to these things like inclusion and belonging? It's really a mix of stories and data that creates action, right? To drive real change, you need to combine the power of the two. Now, stories are great because they connect us at the human level. And stories can be anything around how people feel about, or how new hires feel, anecdotes, what you would like the employee experience to be, how it is currently. And data provides evidence that helps us make informed decisions. Data could be things like employee engagement scores, retention rates, time to hire, all those things that we measure. Now, when you combine both of them, you create a more compelling narrative because not only can people imagine what things look like now and what they should look like for employees, but they now have some sort of metric or KPI to follow to find out what is our baseline and how do we know if we're making progress. Now, there's a lot of data that I'm going to share right now about the impact of inclusion and belonging. But at the end of it, the message here, the headline is when people feel like they belong, they are not only going to go above and beyond in their work, but they're going to want to stay at the organization longer. So here's some of those data points, right? It's very clear that there's a big impact whenever you make any improvement in inclusion and belonging. Whenever we focus on these things, we see typically a 50% increase in the intention to stay. Now think about what that would look like for your top talent, where you don't have to worry so much about your top talent looking elsewhere. You know that their intention is to be there for the long term and build a career at your organization. We've also seen that it reduces turnover by an average of 19%. And about 91% of employees that we found are at certified inclusive workplaces report that they're satisfied. I'll talk about that study that we've done in a second, but we have found a way of measuring inclusion and belonging. We call it the inclusion index, and we found that those that rate really highly on the inclusion index also have very satisfied employees. And lastly, this is important for anybody out there that's looking at top line, bottom line growth, is organizations that are more inclusive report that revenue coming from innovative ideas or innovation overall is higher by 20%. So I want to stop here and share a quick story on something that's really stuck with me around what is the power of inclusion and belonging. Now, this is a story of an experiment that was done years ago, right? We had two groups. There was the control group. It was a group of people pulled together. They were asked to put together a presentation for a panel of judges. That was all the guidance that were given. And then there was the observed group. And this observed group was doing the same thing. They were putting together a presentation for a panel of judges, but they were given a lot more instruction. They were told who were the judges, their backgrounds, and they were explicitly asked to create a presentation that resonated and was relevant to those judges. The control group did not get any of that guidance. So what do you think happened? The control group, surprisingly, ended up doing a lot better at their presentation. The judges considered their presentation and their pitch much more persuasive, more prepared, polished, while the observed group that was given all of this extra guidance had the lowest marks on all of those out of the two. So why is that? They found out that the group that was observed was spending a disproportionate amount of their brain activity. They were monitoring their brain activity for both groups while they were doing this exercise. They were using a disproportionate amount of their brain activity towards showing up in a certain way, creating the presentation in a certain way, showing up as someone that had to almost be a performance or an act, while the control group was using all of their brain power on creating the best possible presentation. This is the power of inclusion and belonging. Whenever you have an environment where people can show up as their true selves, they are giving you their fullest potential. Otherwise, if they can't do that, and if they have to somehow perform in a certain way or show up or act in a certain way, right, that is not authentic to them, they are spending a good portion of their brain power, their potential on anything but the work. So just think about that. What could you do with a workforce that it was 100% focused on the work? All right, so let's talk about how you get started and where inclusion and belonging typically show up. Now, inclusion shows up in a few different places, right? It shows up in the onboarding process. A thing to consider here is, do you spend time in your onboarding process showing employees why their role matters and how it's connected to the larger organization and the larger mission? A lot of organizations miss out on this one. They just focus on the technical skills. They focus on, here's where you can find everything. Here's the handbook. But they don't give them a moment to think, you are part of this large organization, this mission, whatever that might be, and your role is important in these specific ways. Employees, if they are not given that guidance, will not typically make that connection themselves. That is a way where inclusion shows up. Next, do you get feedback from people before you make a decision? Oftentimes, things are going fast. We make decisions, and then the first time that the change is communicated with people is once it's been made, right? This creates a lot of distrust in the process from the employee side. How can you fold in the employee's perspective, even if they're just sharing their feedback, not necessarily making changes, but sharing their feedback, to create a stronger bond between the employee and the organization? This is a very important one around managers. A lot of managers are trained to be experts that then tell the rest of their team how to perform the work at that expert level. And this is definitely needed. There's no doubt about that. But there's a crucial element that is coaching that creates a more personalized experience for the team, for the employees in that team. So are you creating experts completely, solely, or are you also helping managers find coaching opportunities with their employees? And then lastly, are you explaining why people are promoted? Is there a story behind why people are rewarded? This is a great opportunity to tie any of those personnel movements into the values of your organization, the kind of workplace that you want to create. If you don't do that, nothing necessarily may go wrong, but if you're already in an organization that the trust levels are not the highest, it could lead to this feeling of favoritism, right? And politicking, because they don't know why so-and-so was promoted. And again, without that information, they will probably go towards the worst case scenario. Belonging shows up in a few of the same spots, but in a different way, right? So first place that I would ask all of you to think about is, do employees feel recognized and know that growth is based on merit? Again, telling that story of why somebody is being rewarded, why somebody is being promoted, can help create this sense of you get rewarded by the work you do, not by who you are. And so then I'm not being dinged because of how I show up or who I am. It's really the work that matters. Remember to constantly reiterate on that story. Now, are there multiple channels that accommodate everybody at your organization? This recently came up in an organization that we were working with. It was a healthcare organization that year after year would have low scores when it came to communication. Employees felt that communication was not frequent enough, that it was not detailed enough. And when we were talking to their leadership team, they were incredibly frustrated because they told us we have spent so much resources and time building out our communication strategy, and it still doesn't show up on their survey. So as we explored it, we found out that they were indeed doing a lot to communicate better, but they were heavily catering towards extroverts at their organization. They were doing town halls, they were doing team meetings, they were sharing important messages in public settings where only an extrovert would be open or potentially comfortable in sharing their thoughts or having a conversation. They were not doing much for introverts. And as we explored it, they were very candid that we do have a lot of introverts at this organization, right? So as they started to fold in more introvert-friendly communication strategies, they saw their scores slowly go up. So think about not just the different departments or roles that you have, but just the different personalities that you might have or the different methods that people might want to hear their communication through. And if you don't know what they are, ask, right? It's also a great opportunity to send maybe a targeted survey around communication, have some focus groups, make sure that your managers are asking these in their one-on-ones and their team conversations. Some way for you to know, are we communicating in the way that really makes sense for our people, right? The last one is all about psychological safety. Can people offer respectful, right, but still true criticism without fear of negative consequence? This is the #1 marker for psychological safety. Can I say what I believe I need to say respectfully without the fear of something bad happening because I criticized an idea, I disagreed with the boss, or I, said something that, is the way that I would say it? Am I going to get dinged for that? If time over time they see that that's not the case, they will feel more safe psychologically. Another quick way for you to improve this is helping your managers speak last, right? Whenever there's a room of people and the most influential or powerful person in that room is there, ask them to think about speaking last so that the rest of the team can have their time and their space and then jumping in. That will create a dramatically different environment because people will feel like they are actually being heard. So real quick, I just want to share a few data points that we found in a study that Best Companies Group did in partnership with Color Magazine, where we were trying to find the most inclusive workplaces in America. We've studied over 100 companies, done a survey with thousands of employees, and currently we do have this study available for you to sign up. It is also a recognition opportunity, so any organizations that are a part of this research that have high marks on the inclusive index will be recognized by Best Companies Group and Color Magazine as an inclusive workplace. So you can find out more at bestcompaniesgroup.com. But here's some of the data points that we found as we were studying truly inclusive workplaces across the country. Psychological safety, again, came up very strongly. 90% of employees at certified inclusive workplaces felt safe to express their ideas, opinions, and beliefs. Going back to some of the themes that we've been talking about. Inclusion also lifted a sense of pride, right? It raised how proud people were to work at that organization. 92% of employees felt proud to be at that employer from certified inclusive workplaces. And it also led to employees going above and beyond. 94% of employees at these organizations said they were willing to do extra to help their organization succeed. They also really appreciated progress, just even the effort of trying to become a more inclusive workplace. 90% of employees highlighted the effort, not necessarily whether they were in an inclusive environment or not, but highlighted the effort that their organization was doing as something that really tied into their satisfaction. And then last, again, the power of the manager. Managers' roles were huge. 89% of employees told us that their manager, their commitment to creating an inclusive environment made a big difference in their workplace experience. And there were some areas of struggles too, some challenges, mostly around the idea of career growth and fairness. Even within the most inclusive workplaces that we studied, 10% of employees disagreed with the question of promotion and review results are transparent at this company. 1 out of 10 people at the best organization we studied still had concerns about this. And 19% of employees, so about 2 out of 10, were unsure, right? Not necessarily negative, but they just couldn't say this was true, that employees of different backgrounds are encouraged to apply for higher positions. So again, these are areas or these are insights that highlight where we got to focus in order to create an inclusive environment, even for the best. And it's about growth. It's about fairness. A quick few places where you can get started, or a few ways that you can get started, is really a 3-step process. Is first figure out where you are today, find some way of measuring your current level of inclusion. And you can measure this in whatever way you want, right? So that's your KPI that you can pick. It can be retention rates. It could be percentage of demographic makeup, right? It could be time to hire for certain areas or roles or groups that you're interested in. But pick something that tells you where your baseline is. That'll be your KPI moving forward. A lot of organizations skip this step, and it becomes really hard to understand, are we making progress? And then the next most important thing is spend as long as you can at the top to build the case that this is important. This needs to be discussed at the C-level, and this needs to be a business priority. And if it's not, spend as much time as you can at that level, because even if you get started, if you don't have that backing, it will eventually fizzle out. We've seen this time and again. And then a few things to keep you going as you move forward is communicate a lot. Talk about your progress as well as the small wins that you have along the way. Make sure that this does not feel like an HR thing, right? Like an HR initiative. You can do that by folding in leaders from other functions to be either sponsors or active contributors in the effort. Celebrate humbly, and by this I mean definitely celebrate, share the good stuff, how things are going better, but constantly remind people that there's still more work to do, right? This makes it a journey, not a destination. And then stay focused on those KPIs as much as possible. There's always opportunity and reason to change the KPIs, but make sure that there's a good reason to do that and there's a why behind it. What I often tell organizations is it's oftentimes to change what you're measuring or change what you're trying to improve if you are neither making progress nor learning what is or isn't working. So if you're not learning, if you're not winning, time to think about a different metric to follow. All right, so I hope that this was helpful, sharing some of the trends, right, that we found here within the state of Maryland, as well as some of the trends that we found in our study of the most inclusive workplaces in America. Hope that was helpful. Now we're going to, I'm checking the Q&A. There was one question that came up around how do we ensure that the efforts to foster like inclusion and belonging are owned by the entire organization and not just HR. And that goes back to what I mentioned earlier. It's this idea of, do you have more than just HR leading the charge? Now, HR could be leading and project managing this moving forward, but if it's strictly led and confined within that space, it will feel like it's just an HR thing, not a business imperative. So think about how ideally folks at the C-level or the CEO can be an active participant in this effort, making sure that their messages include mentions of inclusion, include mentions of workplace excellence. That will make it feel more than just an HR initiative. It'll make it feel like a business-wide initiative. Okay. All right. So we are now going to transition to our panel. So I'm going to stop sharing here. And so I'm going to transition to our panel. And these are, again, leaders that walk the talk and are helping make businesses in Maryland thrive financially and with their people. All right, to start, we have Darla J. McClure, who is a principal at Stein Sperling. Darla McClure's business and employment law practice is driven by her deep desire to help people. She works with clients to understand their needs and craft practical legal solutions that meet their unique business goals. And her commitment to keeping clients informed and delivering top-tier service sets her apart. Darla serves as a trusted advisor, providing steady guidance in an ever-changing legal landscape. Whether it's reviewing contracts or handling complex business matters, her clients see her as a part of their team, relying on her for everyday tasks and major legal decisions. Now, in addition to her transactional work, Darla specializes in employment law, helping businesses comply with laws, draft policies, and resolve disputes. She's experienced in preparing key documents like restrictive covenants, confidentiality agreements, and executive employment contracts. Welcome, Darla.
Good morning. Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, good morning. All right, and next we have Melissa Walker. Melissa is an owner, EVP, and CFO at KCW Engineering Technologies, Inc., with over 25 years of experience. She's earned her bachelor's in accounting from the University of Oklahoma and oversees financial strategy and HR, ensuring KCW's core values shape the Team KCW experience. Post-pandemic, Melissa led a 51% staff growth and introduced a wellness program with paid counseling, as well as launched the KCW Wellness Room. She's also strengthened teamwork through virtual town halls and weekly publications while maintaining employee favorites like Appreciation Day and the KCW Girls STEM program. Melissa serves on the board of the House of Ruth Maryland, advocating for women and children affected by domestic violence. And she's spoken on panels for NAWBO and Enterprising Women of the Year. Awards include NAWBO's Women Business Owner of the Year, Enterprising Women Magazine's Enterprising Woman of the Year, and the Daily Record's Maryland's Top 100 Women. Melissa, welcome.
Thank you, and thank you for having me today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you both for being here. So let's jump right in. I'd like to ask a question that, covers both of your very extensive experiences. Both of you have experience in leadership as well as in supporting organizational growth. So can you tell us, how do you ensure that your company's policies and practices are actually keeping pace with the evolving needs of the workforce you're overseeing or supporting? And so whoever wants to start first, go for your
Sure,
turn.
I'll go ahead and take that. I love this question actually, because you've given me some homework to do, because you're actually part of how we stay on top of the evolving needs of our workplace. We feel like we have to have real-time data, right? And that real-time data comes from knowing your team. We create a culture where we have one-on-ones. Then that stems to our managers meeting with supervisors, our top execs meeting with managers, and then that gets pushed to the top, right? And so that allows us through conversation to know the needs of our team. But in addition, a lot of what you were talking about with your extroverts and your introverts, we partake in a lot of surveys. The surveys will come out about whether it's strategies or issues or determining our best step forward with our benefits, and we poll the team. Understanding then, in addition to that, I do believe that there's a little bit of a understanding maybe that we know who's answering that data and we don't. So the other level that we have is, the wonderful data that Best Companies Group gives us. We take that data and we fold it into understanding from all of those three pillars what we can do to stay on top of the evolving needs of our team members.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you. Darla, anything to add to that?
I think Melissa said it wonderfully, and I think our firms are very similar in that regard. The one thing that I would just kind of restate, just to let everybody know, is that it's a matter of listening to your team and to your staff, right? Because they're talking about policies and things that they want or that we may not have, and so listening to them, because they know kind of what we have and what we don't have, or what the person, the company down the street has that we don't have. And so, talking through those and having those conversations with them is key. We have something that we implemented during COVID, which is the anonymous suggestion box. So, and it's only manned by our managing partner, and it's anonymous. We don't know who sends it, but people can write in and say, make certain suggestions. I mean, sometimes they're very basic. On Wednesdays we do Wednesdays everybody's in the office, and so we do like fruit and bagels and donuts in the morning. And one person one day will say, I want more donuts, and the next person will say, well, I want more fruit. And so it's kind of comical, but it's really a good place for people that are the introverts that don't want to speak up, can be heard. But it's really about listening to your team.
Yeah. Am I the only one that would be on Team Donuts on that one? I feel like
No,
that's
we,
not
we
the
have a
best
lot of
answer.
people. We have a lot of people on Team Donuts.
Not the best answer, but let's be honest, right? Thank you, thank you. One of the other things that has come up a lot in conversations around figuring out how to not only build a great workplace, but to maintain it, is this idea of retention, right?
Mhm.
We had the great resignation. In
Mhm.
many ways, I think we're still like recovering from that, because now there's obviously a tighter business outlook, right? And people are adjusting accordingly. So what strategies have you found really make an impact in retaining the top talent that you have? And, aligned with that is, are there any legal considerations, that play a role into these strategies to retain your top talent? So Melissa, let's start with you about, your thoughts on that, and then Darla,
Sure.
what's your thoughts on the legal?
Something through polling our team and talking to them, and also just reading the data that is presented online, was the importance of the continued hybrid schedule. It was very important to our team. We put out data that even allowed them to say what was their ideal amount of days in the office and how could we make that work. So when the pandemic was over, a lot of companies were changing their policies. We committed to our team that we had a new standard, and it allowed for, I think, everyone's desired schedule, and we made it work. And I think that our team saw that as us committing to their well-being, in the sense that the hybrid schedule allows them to preserve PTO. It allows them to not have to take a day off if they need to go to a doctor's appointment or attend a child visit or do something for an elderly parent. I think that helps them allow to know that we see them as a whole, and it's not just someone that's going to sit at a seat at KCW. I think that kind of rolls into the other thing that I think was really important in retention, is that KCW sees a team member when we onboard them as part of the team. It's not filling a role or a position. To be honest with you, sometimes in our interviews, we interview good talent and we don't have a spot for them, but we know that we need to make a spot work, right? And we'll bring them on the team, and we'll find a role for them. And we have a lot of team members who have been here, and maybe they thought that they wanted to do X and they realize that they don't want to do it anymore. And we see their skill set and their gifts and their talents. And we are committed to finding we're committing to making this a permanent home for them where they will thrive. So they are excited to come to work, because people don't want to come and fill a position, not be something that they're excited to wake up and go to work every day. And I think as owners and as managers, we're responsible to know our team well enough to say, did you know that you really excel in this area, right? And allow them to see that in themselves, And often we have people coming in admin that end up in technical fields, right? We have people that come in accounting and end up in HR, and that's our commitment to them, just being part of the KCW team, you know, for what we see as the forever future.
That's a great commitment. It sounds like there's a lot of personalized management going into how your organization treats their employees, Melissa. And it reminds me of so I think Dr. Knight, who was the co-founder or the founder of the SAS Institute. One of my favorite quotes is he said, you know, he was the founder and CEO. He said, every day I see all of my employees drive out the campus going home, it is my job to make them want to come back. Right.
Love that.
Yeah. So it's just like, how do you make sure that people feel like they want to come back? They are treated as a person, not just an employee. Darla, any like legal considerations that we need to think about as we're thinking about our retention strategies?
I mean, I think you just have to be up to date on employment laws in general, right? Your workforce, there are so many laws that you have to be aware of, that having a good HR person or somebody that's up to date on that, I think is key. I feel like aside from the legal considerations based on what Melissa was saying, I think flexibility is huge for retention right now. I think that's, you know, one of the top things that companies need to look at. But also it's your culture. Right. Like if you ask people in our firm, you know, what do you like best? And it's like, it's the people, right? It's the understanding that they have of their neighbor in terms of what they're going through or what their needs may be. It's the team approach that you take, but it's that culture that you have, and that starts at the top. Right. So, you know, the managing partner, the COO, you know, those high level executives, you know, that come in and say hi to people every morning. I mean, that means a lot, right? That's, you know, they're not just running to their office. They're taking the time to talk to people. And that's kind of what we have here. And I think that's a huge retention strategy, is just to, you know, make people feel welcome, included, and, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah, make them feel heard, make them feel like they matter. Absolutely. Absolutely. So I have a couple of questions now on you, Darla, because we have, you know, legal expert here, and, you know, how could you say no to free legal advice?
Of course.
But I mean, there's obviously been a lot of changes in employment law nationwide, Maryland for sure. Can you share like some of the insights of some of the things, you know, some of the most impactful changes that have been going on and how they are affecting employers and employees right now?
Sure. So I think that I think there's two kind of what I would call hot topics right now, right? The one was the increase in the salary threshold for exempt employees. So those employees that aren't entitled to overtime if they meet the salary threshold, and if they meet the duties test, then they're considered exempt, and you don't have to pay overtime. So what happened this year was there was an increase in that threshold. Went up to, I think, $43,000 and change effective July 1. And so employers had to say, well, what am I going to do? Am I going to, in order to keep that employee exempt, am I going to increase their salary to meet that threshold now? Or am I going to convert them to non-exempt, and then any hours over 40, they would have to work or be paid overtime? And so that was kind of a struggle for companies to kind of figure out, you know, what makes the most sense for them, but also taking a look at the employees and saying, you know, I have this huge change that the company is going through, but it's also affecting my staff too. And how do I keep morale up, and how do I deal with this so that both the needs are met? So that was a big one. And then we have, in addition to that July 1 increase, there's another increase going in January 1 that is going to increase it even further. And so, you know, companies are scrambling a bit to try to figure out, you know, what works best for them. And then the second topic that, you know, everybody was talking about was the non-compete. Right. FTC came in and said, you know, ban on non-competes. And it was slated to go into effect September 4th. However, I believe it was a court in Texas ruled that the FTC didn't have the authority to institute that ban. It's states that determine that, and so no non-compete ban right now. I don't know. No national non-compete ban. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. My guess is that at some point there will be some sort of national ban. I don't know what that will look like, but obviously the one that was put into place was not going to fly. And so I think right now you're just looking at the states. It's state specific right now, to determine what you can do to protect your business and still make it so that employees want to come work for you, knowing that they're going to have to sign a restrictive covenant agreement, a non-compete. So it's tricky, but there is ways to handle that, to like I said, protect the business and still allow an employee to earn a living.
Is there like a typical timeline of how this might roll out, the non-compete battle that you foresee? Are we looking at months, years?
Uh,
You had to
I have
guess.
no idea. I mean, I'm advising my clients to, take a look at your restrictive covenants that you have right now, right? The three main ones are confidentiality, the non-compete, and then you have non-solicit, which is, you can't take my clients with you when you leave. And, make sure they're written in a way that is designed to protect, what we call the legitimate business interests of the employer, right? They have to be narrow enough to be enforceable. And so you don't have, one of the things we were talking about were retention, right? You want to be able to get good people. And if you throw a non-compete at them or non-solicit that is overly broad, that good talent's not going to come work for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything else as you're advising clients on how to structure their, restricted covenants, regardless of what happens with a non-compete ban, to balance the business needs, but also, balance the fairness toward employees so it doesn't become a deterrent? Anything else that you advise them on?
Yeah, no, you just, they have to be narrow. That's what the courts are looking at when they're, when there's a case involving a restrictive covenant. The courts are saying, okay, is this narrow enough to protect your business, but still, allow the employee to go out and earn a living, right? Can you balance that need? And you can, a really good confidentiality agreement goes a long way. And I think, that's always the confidentiality, the protection of your trade secrets. It's always the basis for a lot of the other restrictive covenants anyway. So having a good confidentiality agreement, I think, is key.
One more, because I think this is obviously a big important topic for a lot of people, is
Sure.
how much influence do you think the upcoming election will have on what kind of conversation we're having on this time next year, like the restricted covenants?
um, I think that, oh, this is a hard one. Depending on the election, I mean, I think it's going to tip the scales one way or the other, right? More conservative. I don't think we'll see the ban for a while. More liberal, it might come up again sooner rather than later.
Great. Thanks, John.
Mhm.
All right. So for you, Melissa, I wanted to highlight, one of the awesome achievements that I saw in your bio, which is rolling out the employee wellness program, which is no small feat. You did that at KCW, right? What advice would you give to HR leaders who are thinking about rolling out a similar program? And if you could share a little bit more details about the program itself, right? But share some thoughts on what should they think about, how should they prepare to do that? Because whenever you're looking at something that requires budget, there's always an uphill battle. If you could share some of your insights on that one, on the wellness program.
I would love to. Something that you had said earlier about some of the data that came back about team members knowing leadership's commitment to something, that's free, right? So much of, so much of, I think, a wellness program starts with a lot of measures that are free. And it has to do with, number one, you have to know your team, right? In order to create the wellness program, what are you providing that is meeting the needs to create and enhance their well-being. And so I would say, number one, know your team. That's free. It's through talking to them, building relationships with them, and also surveying them. It's also needs to come from the top, right? Something that we did as leaders, the CEO and myself, as we put out a weekly video to our team when the pandemic hit and we needed to be able to communicate in a way. We addressed to our team how important it was for them to take care of themselves and to make themselves a priority. So I think that you have to create that message, and it has to just go throughout the company. But also being able to push out initiatives that are meeting their needs. And I think you'd be really surprised the initiatives that are out there that are low cost initiatives. I would love to share some examples, because we have things that we can consider program that have low dollars. And then we have things that we invested that could be health insurance, and it could be over $100,000. So there's a large span, and we start with free, which is knowing your team. And then we move on to creating a message, an environment, and where you're saying that their well-being is a priority to you. We found that through our health benefits, and I really would suggest everyone to reach out to your carrier. There's a lot of free apps and services that are provided. We are with Care First, and we found that, I don't know if you all know about Noom. It's something personally that I wanted to use. Noom is something that helps you with your, it can be dieting and eating healthy, and it comes at a subscription cost. It is free to our employees through our health insurance. There's a meditation app. There's personal health coaching. There's Smart Dollar. That's something that we actually paid for our team. And that has to do with, not your 401k and investing. This has to do with budgeting. What are your groceries? What are you spending? What are you making? How can you put aside, a rainy day fund? And we knew that was part of what our team was struggling with. I mean, stats were, you had inflation, you had mental health was, certainly something that, everyone was seeing a decline in. So these things are free. And again, you have to brand it. You have to send it out to your team and say, this is available. We encourage you to take advantage of these benefits. We also found that getting people to just pause and take care of their health. There were so many barriers. It was, you were sitting at your kitchen table for 11 hours a day and just not taking a break. So we created a social media campaign throughout our intranet, which was Fresh Air 15, totally free. The CEO and myself, we said, post your pictures, take 15 minutes, get outside. We want to see you do something that is good for you. And I will tell you, it became one of our most favorite things. And again, you guys, this is free. We'd see people, it then turned into what they were doing on the weekends, fishing with their kids. And it got the team to see each other just outside of work. We also put into practice something that we have a couple times a year. It's called Healthy Habits Challenge. And there's financial incentive behind it. But if you just hear me out, it's like a 6-week program. It probably could cost you like $200. And basically, and anyone, feel free to reach out to me for this information, because it's so easy. It's a chart. It's a point system. You do it over a period of time, and it focuses on your on nutrition. Maybe it says skip caffeine today, you get a point. Or eat a serving of vegetables today, and you get a point. And then underneath that, so you have your nutrition, and then you have physical. It could say, did you get outside for 1 mile, or did you take a 30-minute class? And so you got a point for that. And then underneath of it was your mental health well-being. Meditate, pray, do whatever it is to unwind, you get a point. Go to bed by 10 o'clock, you get a point. And what we did was people signed up for it, and then we split out into teams. So there was like some, what we did in that was we're very competitive. And so in the office, we were taking pictures like, this is my salad. This is how I'm getting points for carrots. And for people who were just consistent, we would have a daily raffle. I'm sorry, a weekly raffle, right? So, Jane and Fred, they got a point in each area, like throughout the week. So we're going to put everyone's name in a drawing, and someone got a $15 gift card, right? And then at the end of the 6 weeks, you get a winner who has the top amount of points. This is something that promotes good health, right? It promotes us making it a priority. It has such a little cost, and it was so much fun. And if we go back, look at, we have videos of people doing planks and working out in their garage and saying that they were riding their bikes and all of that stuff. So again, these are some of those things that if you are a smaller company and you're just trying to frame a program, they're initiatives that are fun. And they bring your team together, and they allow you to focus on those things. But in addition to that, our employee recognition program is very important to us. And again, it's something that you don't have to invest a lot of money in. We want our culture to be positive reinforcement, right? So we have acts of excellence, and we have our all-star staff. And that is, if a client notices something and they say it to it, or a leader, we full blast the entire company and let them know. If we have an employee that sees another employee do something great, like there's these small gift cards that can go out, everyone gets recognition, but it creates a culture where everyone knows that everyone's watching, right? Like you're not, people's eyes are on you, right? You're going to have to be voted. Like we have superlatives, employee of the year, manager of the year. And we also have something that is called Lift Your Leader. And that is something that is, we're trying to get, our entry level people coming in the door to then, and it's actually going on now. So it's a secret to our leaders again for the second year in a row, but they're putting together with their team a package to give to their supervisor. And it doesn't have to be monetary. It can be cards that they wrote. Last year, we had Post-it notes all over someone's workstation, or maybe they get them a mug from their favorite football team. But it's like, you're going to be noticed from your manager to the person on their team, but also the team to the manager. And we just want that to be something that's ever moving. But the last thing that if I just have a second to talk about is our mental health initiative. I'm in the wellness room right now. This is our coloring board behind us. We have a massage chair. It's pretty incredible. We have a Peloton in front of me and a screen. And we have books and a water cooler. And, yes, is this a little bit more of a higher level of commitment to your wellness? But it's a room. And the things within it don't come at a super high cost, but the message that it sends the team is invaluable, right? So we invested in mental health care for our team and paid 12 sessions for our team a year to be able to get counseling through BetterHelp. Studies show that 10 sessions can get you through an issue that you're having, which is why we picked the number 12. This room allows people to come into it, to be able to not have to go out to their car, to make it a priority, and to really take that financial barrier away, which with inflation and all the ways, that people have less money, it's really hard for people to make getting counseling a top priority. And so by taking away that financial barrier and providing a room for it, that was really one of my most favorite things that we were able to provide our team.
Those are a great list of initiatives, Melissa. So I hope anybody out there, hope that you all took notes of all those because they're not only effective but thrifty. So
Hey, it's the CFO, right? I mean, I'm a CFO
I
too.
was gonna
So like things have
I
to
was,
be, things start at thrifty, and
yeah,
then, as you
sure.
progress, you're able to invest more.
But I'm saying that because it's like it should be affordable to pretty much anybody out there, right? Because we're not talking about big dollars or maybe any dollars. It's just a matter of planning and getting it all set up, which of course takes a lot of hard work. I'm curious as you obviously have a lot of initiatives around wellness and helping employees thrive personally and professionally. Are there any markers or any metrics that you use to get a sense of what's working, what's not working, what should we spend more time on to build out, like anything that you follow that tells you whether something is successful when it comes to wellness?
Sure. So it's surveys such as yours that has given feedback for the most recent things that we've put into place. We do year-end surveys to be able to allow people to rank things. So that allows us to know where to reinvest dollars if there's low participation in something. We have exit interviews. And the exit interviews are really great because it's something that, someone going out the door, one of the questions is if there was improvements that KCW could make towards its benefits package, what would it be? And we found for many years that it was healthcare. I mean, like you said, healthcare is not affordable. And we spent years tweaking it in multiple ways. And as you know, every time you meet, it increases yearly. And it was just the last couple, I want to say it was 2 years ago that, again, we just really said, we've got to take this apart and put it back together. And that's going to come at a large cost to KCW, but this is what our team needs. And this is what they're saying. And if we want to retain our top talent, this is the investment we have to make. And so we don't see that comment anymore. And when you see something that is an issue no longer be an issue anymore,
Yeah.
it's just such a celebratory part of the process of knowing your team and spending the time to try and solve, the top issues that they're having.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Seeing those numbers go up or just not become an issue anymore, that's a huge, indicator that it's working for sure. A question going back to sort of the legal thinking here, and for both of you, obviously, but Darla, I'd love to get your thoughts on this is, because you work closely with businesses to help them navigate legal challenges. Have you found like there's any like kind of common pitfalls that companies, step into or when they're trying to build a better workplace, and how do you advise them to avoid them if they can?
So what I see a lot of is kind of the unknown of how many employment laws there actually are, right? You have, and I think I mentioned overtime. A lot of people still don't understand that it's not hours over a pay period. So if you have a 2-week pay period, it's not hours over that pay period. It's any hours over 40 in a work week. And some people will still, in the private sector, allow people to, in lieu of overtime, to take time off. So, for example, if it's in the same work week, that's fine, right? If somebody has, is coming up on 40 hours on Thursday and they take Friday off, or they just, work a little bit and they offset it later, that's fine. But when you have somebody that works, 45 hours during one week, but then next week they come in late on Monday, that's not allowed, right? And so, it's just the knowledge around, those types of situations that, can be fixed very easily by just understanding the law. And that having a good HR person is key. And they are the person that is up to date, or they know when there's a concern or issue and they know they need to reach out. I work with on my larger clients, I do work with their in-house HR department, and with smaller clients, I'm working with the CEOs or the CFOs, and trying to figure out what works best or what we're doing is correct. I review policies constantly, handbooks, things of that nature. But it's it's understanding that you have to follow the law, because if you don't, it could be huge consequences for the employer, similar to like, not paying, a wage properly. You have the Maryland Wage Payment and Collection Act, which as an employer is very scary, because if you mess up, the employee can get 3 times the amount they're owed in wages plus attorney's fees. And so we're one of those states in Maryland where you really have to make sure you're paying people correctly. And a lot of it can be solved by a simple phone call. I mean, I take calls all day long with just, quick sentences, quick questions here and there that I can answer quickly. And it's just a matter of having the resources for your HR department to actually be able to reach out to an attorney or somebody that knows, that can confirm for them, what the law says. But you do have to be mindful. You can't just kind of put your head in the sand and well, for 30 years, it's never happened to me, because when it does happen, it can be huge, and you just don't want to be in that position. So I'm constantly, giving advice and counsel to clients to just, stay out of the legal concerns. Let's make sure we do it the right way.
A quick phone call can save you thousands of dollars.
Yes,
So
absolutely. Yes.
Anything to add to that one, Melissa? Anything on your end? Kind of like when
Well,
you see
for us, we lean on
That's okay.
people like Darla.
Mhm.
Back in the day, I've been here for 25 years, it would be me calling Darla. And then as time went on and KCW grew, and then certainly throughout the pandemic, the needs of HR just continued to just, my goodness, if we could all just close our eyes and remember what those days looked like. It was like minute to minute
2019.
HR.
Yeah.
And so throughout that time, we had already been working towards a dedicated HR person. We invested in her getting her certification, and now we have 2 people on our team that have their certification, and that's huge for us. So we lean upon them and the expertise that they get, through professional development and the alerts that they receive. But in addition to that, we always have that top level of the attorney that we can consult to make sure that, we're up to date.
That's great. Great. So I just wanted a quick shout out to everybody out there. Put in your questions. We already have a couple here. So we're going to have a couple more questions for Darla and Melissa, and then we're going to go to the questions in the Q&A. So make sure you put them in there and we can answer those very, very soon. So Melissa, you mentioned obviously CFO and also leading the, HR side at KCW. So can you tell us about how you go about balancing the fiscal, right, responsibility that you have, as well as the people-centered responsibility, building a better workplace for your folks? How does that factor in when you're thinking about what initiatives to take on?
Sure. I think we definitely have to realize that it should be something that takes up a good amount of space on our income statement. It's our team. And so you want to spend dollars investing in your team. Now you can do it wisely, and you can do it in a way that that what you're trying to push out to your team is being well received. Something that I always think of that I learned a long time through a book is about people's love languages, right? It's like you could say, oh, but I gave them flowers. And you're like, I hate flowers. Do you see what I'm saying? And so you gave them flowers because you want someone to give you flowers. And so that person just spent money on flowers when really maybe that person just needed a compliment, right? And so when I think about people-centered workplace, I know it's like, I keep saying it over and over again, but you got to know your people. You got to know that your dollars are being spent. Your intentions can be in a good place, but if it's not being received in a way that they feel valued, then you're not spending your dollars wisely. So, it's ensuring that what you're communicating to your team is exactly what it is that that makes them feel valued and makes them feel like they're a center of your company. Also, I think there are some things to consider when you say that is pretty frugal. Like there's ways that you can really brainstorm and be creative and creating that dollar value. I encourage everyone on this call to reach out to their bank for whatever credit card you use for your company, and see if they have a cash rewards program. Monthly, we get dollars deposited in our account, and we push out, and it's encouraged anyway because of check fraud, but pay your bills with your credit card. Let it turn into cash back for your company. Create a bucket. Spend that bucket on your team. Like if you're looking for cash that maybe you don't have right now, again, spend those dollars wisely. Make sure that it's communicating the way that you want it to communicate to your team, and just be creative and resourceful in how you create that program. I think it's how it allows you to balance the two.
Yeah. No, that's great. I don't think anybody had on their bingo card that we were going to talk about the 5 love languages today, but I'm glad that we did. So,
hey, do you know the 5 love language?
Oh yeah, I know my love language.
All right, let's hear it.
Acts of service. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and my wife's, what's my wife's? Oh, words of affirmation. So,
Okay, don't buy her flowers, right?
I learned that very early on. Acts of service was not resonating. It's like, why don't you like the things I like?
I know, and it's so sad because you had such good intentions, right?
I did. And then we read the book, and then it just like, oh, I see.
Mind-blowing. They have a book for the workplace, I heard, but I haven't read that one, but I do try and think. I think in terms of that when we think about rewarding our team.
Absolutely. It makes a lot of sense. It's tough to pull off quality touch though. So at the workplace.
That one has to be out of that.
No.
Physical touch, what is it? Maybe that's not HR compliant.
That would not be.
So
your attorney would tell you no.
Thank you, Darla. Thank you.
Oh, legal counsel says no, don't do that. So we do have a couple of questions, so I'm going to shift over to that because I know we're running a little low on time. And again, thank you for the fantastic conversation, Darla and Melissa. We have a couple here. So one is for you, Melissa. It came in, says this is from Wanda. It says, when you create a position that fits a potential employee, how do you handle the hire since it's not what the person was interviewing for?
Sure. So when we have an interview and we have a debrief from the interview, if this candidate seems like someone that could fill a role that was different, we first go and meet with the rest of the team and say, look, we have this person with this skill set. It's such a strong candidate. Can we think of ways to be able to utilize them and have them join the team? And if we can find that, then we communicate to the candidate and say, look, we have this role that we believe that you're, based upon your experience, based upon, what we see as the talent that you could bring to your team, that it would just be a huge asset. And therefore, this is the role that we have to offer. So I know sometimes we have candidates that are interviewing that reach out that are not specifically going after a certain role. They're just saying, we would like to join your team. This is what I've been doing. And so that's how we work it out with our team. And then that's how we also present it to the candidate.
Great. Thank you, Melissa. Hope that helped. One for you, Darla, is what potential changes to employment law are coming up? And maybe they're not happening, but they are sort of conversations that are bubbling up that we should be looking out for?
Well, we know more once the legislators get back in session, right? After the end of the year. So things that are coming up now, I think I mentioned one, which was the increase in the salary threshold for exempt employees going up again on January 1st, 2025. So be mindful of that. And then we do have the Maryland paid family law, the new law, and that just got pushed back a bit. So contributions aren't starting, I think, until like January 2025 now, with benefits not until, I'm not sorry, July 2025, and then benefits not till July 2026 now. So that's something on the horizon that you just have to keep monitoring to see when finally it'll take effect. And then, wage increases to be mindful of, but really it's, April, May is kind of when I reach out to my clients and say, okay, legislators wrapping up, this is what we're looking at. And we do articles and things like that we post on our website for folks to see what's going on.
And what's your website again so people can go there?
Oh, it's steinsperling.com.
Steinsperling.com. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Darla. Okay, so I think we're wrapping up now, but Darla, Melissa, any final thoughts before we close out today?
No, I want to say thank you. I think, this was very interesting. I actually learned a lot, listening to you speak about the surveys that were done in the Best Companies group. And, I was comforted by the fact that we do a lot of these things already. Like I was saying, oh yeah, we have a wellness room and, we do this. And I will say I loved the cashback bucket for the credit cards because we use it. Our firm uses credit cards all the time for everything. And I don't know if we have, maybe we do have something. I need to look into that, but I think that's a great idea, is to give back to your team those rewards. I think that's a great idea. So I learned a lot today. So I want to thank you for, letting me sit here and listen and participate.
Yes, the same with me. It's such a pleasure hearing from Darla. And I hope, Darla and I reached out last night. It's always great to be able to connect with other business leaders. I think something that I've learned so much from is other people's company culture. Like getting ideas from each other makes us stronger. It allows us to all have the best workplace culture that we can. And so thank you so much, Darla, for sharing. And it was just a great opportunity. So thank you all.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Totally agree. Thank you.
Thank you, Darla. Thank you, Melissa. And so once again, I just want to thank everybody here for being with us. Thank you once again to our amazing panel for sharing your wisdom with all of us and having a good time too while we were doing it. So I really appreciated the conversation. So on behalf of our sponsors, KCW Engineering Technologies, Stein Sperling, and on behalf of the Daily Record and Best Companies Group, thank you for joining us. We hope that you got a lot of value out of this session and that it'll help you continue to do the hard work to create great workplaces across the state. So until next time, have a great day. Take care.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Yeah.